Delighted to welcome the Media and Data Minister, John Whittingdale, to the show. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning. Now, you are talking today about new plans to boost Britain's broadcasters and to protect viewers on video on demand channels. What does that involve?
Well, on the latter, more and more people are turning to the streaming services like Netflix and Amazon and Apple and Disney, etc. And of course, at the moment, they are not regulated in the UK in any way. So we've imposed quite significant obligations on the traditional channels and none on the streamers. And so what we are saying is that we think there may be a case for putting in place the basic standards on those streamers in terms of things like warnings about inappropriate content, age ratings, and possibly mechanisms by which people can complain if they're unhappy with the accuracy. So that is something which at the moment doesn't exist, but we think there is a case for extending to these new channels.
Guardian's reporting today, ministers will push to sell Channel 4 in a TV shake-up after 4 decades as a publicly owned broadcaster. A lot of people not really aware it's publicly owned, of course, getting advertising, of course, like ITV. But what's the purpose of doing that?
Well, we're consulting on what is the best ownership model for Channel 4 going forward. And you're absolutely right that at the moment, Channel 4 is publicly owned, but it doesn't receive any public money. It's entirely dependent on advertising revenue. And in the world we're moving into, where there are more and more competing providers of content, it will be harder and harder to attract advertising revenue on the scale that they have in the past. And so we think there may be a case for looking at alternative ownership models, particularly, which might allow Channel 4 to gain more investment capital to put into programming in order to maintain those audiences.
OK, let's also talk about what we definitely do watch on the telly. And last night, of course, millions tuning in to watch England versus the Czech Republic and, of course, Scotland versus Croatia as well. One match went well, one match went badly for the home nations. But a lot of people now really rather concerned about the fact that there does seem to be one rule for one rule for others. G7 summit, leaders, diplomats, media are allowed to come to this country without having to obey quarantine, self-isolation rules. And now we're told that 3,000, maybe even more UEFA officials, sponsors, hangers-on are all going to be allowed to come to this country for a week or more and not face quarantine, not face self-isolation, when millions of us aren't able to travel on holiday or business or to see family members we've not seen for a year or two without having quarantine. Why is it that people involved in football or sponsors of football match should not have to obey the laws that the rest of us obey?
Well, we have been in a process of gradual relaxation, and we've had a succession of events where we've tested the extent to which we're able to lift restrictions. So last night, for instance, at Wembley, we allowed 20,000 people to attend. They had to demonstrate that they'd had double vaccination or that they had a negative test. We've now decided that on the basis of the evidence we've acquired so far, it's safe to move to a further relaxation. So at the time of the semi-finals, that capacity will go up to 60,000. Now, we've been talking to UEFA. Of course, we've had to relax the restrictions for teams in order to come to this country and compete in the first place. UEFA are very keen to allow more of the people attached to the country's teams who do make it through into the semi-finals. We haven't reached a final agreement about the numbers, but we are keen to hold these competitions in the UK. I think there will be very widespread support for the idea that the semi-finals and final should take place in the UK, and hopefully that at least one, if not two, of our home nations will be featuring in them.
Well, but it's quite absurd, is it not, that UEFA basically said, if we don't allow these people to come in, the hangers-on, the people who pay for everything and the officials, then they'll simply take the semi-finals and the final away from us and move them to Budapest. The Italian Prime Minister has got in, Draghi, to say, you can come here and we won't impose any of those problems on you. Basically, money talks. If you're rich and powerful and you can make a threat, the British government will happily open us up to apparently this terrible risk of COVID, which any other 3,000 people coming into the country would bring, which is why they'd have to quarantine. Either there's a risk of people coming into the country from amber list countries without quarantine, or there isn't. But why is there only a risk for me coming in, but not for someone who's a sponsor of UEFA?
Well, first to say they're not coming in order to be able to do whatever they like and travel wherever they
Really?
want. If
They're
they
going
come
to
in,
be sitting in a travel lodge in Wembley the entire time, apart from when they're
well,
not
no,
at the football match. Really?
they will be staying in a agreed designated place, and then they'll be travelling to a match, and then having attended the match, they'll be going back again.
They're not going to go
Uh,
to any restaurants or bars, and there's going to be a police cordon stopping them do so. Really?
well, the agreement we reach, we're keen still to be able to host these tournaments, but we're not going to do anything which puts public safety
Yes,
at
you are.
risk. So we are absolutely proceeding in line with the advice we receive from Public Health England, from SAGE, and at every stage we will only agree to relaxations if the advice is it is safe. So I took part in discussions earlier on when we were talking about whether or not there should be special dispensation for teams to either come to the UK or indeed for the UK teams to travel abroad to compete, and we were advised that the risk was very small and that therefore it was safe to do so. And as I say, at every stage we have consulted, but it isn't just that we are in discussion with the UEFA about allowing more people to come to attend those matches. We've also agreed that there should be a significant increase in the number of UK spectators.
But you say, look, my thing is, I don't believe there is a risk if people are coming from amber countries and they're testing. That seems to me to be what we need to do. But we've got a 1 in 200 people coming in this country who are being tested and found positive. Now, that is higher than the rate overall in the country, but virtually all of those are from a handful of countries which are on red list and others. 150 countries, people travelling from those countries on the amber list have come in, and people from those countries have not recorded a single positive test. The point is, we don't need these restrictions at all on ordinary people, and the only reason they're being relaxed on these VIPs is because they're very rich and very wealthy and very powerful. Do you not think that sends a message? If you've got money, you can do whatever you bloody well want in this country, and if you haven't, you can't. You have to live under the laws that the government imposes. What message do you think that sends out to us?
Well, the two things I would say is, first of all, that we have only agreed to allow people to come in on the basis that the expert advice is that it is safe to do so.
How?
And
Well,
secondly,
I'm so sorry to interrupt, sir. Why on earth would the expert advice say it was safe for 3,000 UEFA officials to come in, but not for 3,000 other people to come in?
well, I mean, that we haven't
That's a nonsense,
agreed
with all due
that
respect.
particular figure. We are in discussion with UEFA about the numbers that they would like, and we will only agree to allow more people in if we are advised that it is safe. But at every stage, I mean, the semi-finals and the finals are the next stage of our program of test events. At every stage, we have looked very carefully to see whether or not there has been any increase. So far, the evidence is very encouraging. The first step in the what we call the events research program proceeded, and that allowed us to move to relax further, as we did last night. And now we're moving to a third stage. So we are steadily lifting restrictions as and when we are advised it is safe to do so.
60,000 people can attend the semi-finals and the final of the Euros, but my friends can't go to their kids' sports day.
Well, these are one-off events as part of a test program, and obviously the rules governing attendance at those events are still very strict. You have to demonstrate that you've had double vaccination or that you've had a negative.
Why can't parents do that for
test.
a sports day?
Well, I very much hope that they soon can. I mean,
But
like
there's no point soon can. It's
the
23rd of June. Sports days are all coming up in the next few weeks at the end of term. End of term drama productions, graduation ceremonies, school discos. It's all happening in the next few weeks, and we're not talking about restrictions being released until the 19th of July, until basically when schools close. Why are we allowing? Well, I mean, I love football. I'm really delighted the football matches are happening in the UK and that spectators can attend. Why are we not allowing the same freedoms for ordinary families to do really important things with their lives and their children's lives? And we're not, and people singing and dancing at weddings. People are singing and dancing at Wembley. It just, you know as well as I do, this just doesn't smack of things being sensible or things being fair.
I think there is a difference between a one-off event, which can be very carefully controlled, where there can be very strict checks to make sure that people have got the necessary proof of vaccination or negative tests, and simply relaxing it across the country. I would love us to be able to relax it and for people to attend parties and to celebrate and to go to the theatre again. And I very much hope that we will be able to do that soon. But I think it was right that we proceed cautiously. Certainly the people I talk to would much rather the government did adopt a cautious approach and that we do nothing that will put at risk, the huge progress that we've made.
Well, OK, we're going to have to agree to disagree, John Whittingdale. Just finally want to ask you what's happened in Hong Kong today. The pro-democracy paper Apple Daily, they had their assets frozen by the Chinese, who've been under huge amounts of pressure. They have now today announced their closure a few hours ago. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I have to say that's something which I was completely unaware of until you've just mentioned it. So I think I'm not really in a position to comment on that.
OK, all right. Thank you very much. Really appreciate you joining us. John Whittingdale, Media and Data Minister. Thank you very much indeed.